We're about 2 weeks out from the launch of Path of Exile 2 patch 0.5 Return of the Ancients, and in the gap between the reveal and the upcoming launch, we've been receiving some teasers for some new unique items that are being introduced in the upcoming update. I want to focus on one of them in this video, Nightfall, which is a unique shield. This item has quite good basic stats, which makes sense considering this appears to be a pinnacle boss drop from the Breach bosses being added in this update, Esh and Tool. But in this video I want to focus on the skill that this shield provides. Before we dive into the shield though, I want to point out a few things that are different that I noticed in this teaser. Firstly, we have the words Tower Shield here, with the dotted line underneath. That means that you can pop out a tooltip. This is currently not a thing in-game. There's just a tooltip for shields, and I don't think this is actually going to be anything too important. It's likely just a bit of cleanup in regards to shield types, because tower shields represent pure strength shields, and these are the only shields that inflict daze after a successful shield bash from the Raise Shield skill, so I think this will just be a tooltip to clarify that information. There's also the fact that this shield has much higher armour than it would have if we applied these modifiers to the Fortress Tower Shield base type in the game as it currently stands. And we know that from the Q&A, that's because they're updating armour and evasion base types from Act 3 onwards into the endgame to have higher base defensive stats, but just for the purpose of highlighting it in this video, this works out to be about 41% more base armour on the Fortress Tower Shield base type going from patch 0.4 to 0.5, so if that's anything to go by for improvements to other base types, you'll be getting quite a lot more armour and evasion from your gear in the upcoming patch compared to before. Okay, so we see the character here throwing the shield with the use of the Soaring Midnight skill, and this is a skill that becomes another skill whilst the shield is in flight. Soaring Midnight has a 4-second cooldown, and if you don't use the second skill, the shield will return to you and reset the cooldown. However, using the skill whilst the shield is in flight will teleport you to the shield's location and perform a slam attack at that location, and doing this will not reset the cooldown unless the slam itself destroys an ice crystal. The second skill is called Embrace the Fall, and unfortunately we don't actually get to see the numbers on this skill during the teaser. However, we do know that Embrace the Fall will deal melee damage and is a slam, and it will likely scale its damage in a very similar way to Soaring Midnight, which pulls its base physical damage partially from skill level and partially from the armour on the shield, with 50% of that damage being converted to cold. Also notice that Soaring Midnight has no skill cost associated with it, no mana cost. And based on the footage here, it may be the case that Embrace the Fall also doesn't have a skill cost. It's hard to say, but from this footage here, it looks like there's no resource spend going on in the footage when the character actually uses the skill. Now, something else I noticed here is that the character in the footage is indeed a Titan, because we can see the Titan's Ancestral Empowerment node proccing. This node makes every second slam skill you use yourself become ancestrally boosted, and the ancestral boost can be seen on the skill bar with the bluish-green outline. Both Rolling Slam and Forge Hammer on the skill bar here appear to be supported by Fist of War, which is why they always have Ancestral Empowerment ready to go. But when this character uses Soaring Midnight and then Embrace the Fall, notice that the Leap Slam icon becomes ancestrally boosted, then the character uses Rolling Slam, which expends the ancestral boost from the Ancestral Empowerment node, and upon using Embrace the Fall again, the Ancestral Empowerment is visibly back again and ready to go. Now I wanted to mention this because I was hoping that with this being a flip skill, the Soaring Midnight portion of the skill might count as actually using a slam skill since it's tagged as a slam, so that Embrace the Fall could always be ancestrally boosted by Ancestral Empowerment. But that appears to not be the case based on this footage. It looks like only the Embrace the Fall part of the skill will count as actually using a slam for the purpose of mechanics like Ancestral Empowerment. And the reason I thought it might work is because we already have a similar functionality skill gem in the game right now, in the form of the Devour Wyvern skill, that's tagged as a slam but only performs a slam when using the skill from a distance. If you use Devour close to a corpse or close to a cullable target, it won't perform the slam portion of the skill, and it even says that in the skill info. But regardless of this, using Devour always counts as using a slam skill towards these types of counter mechanics, like Ancestral Empowerment or Mountain Splitter, So I thought it may be the case that Soaring Midnight would also count for this, considering it has the slam tag, but it doesn't look like that will be the case. Perhaps this will be changed, but as of this footage, it looks like that won't work. Okay, so I wanted to go through some interactions that I think will be quite good with Nightfall. Firstly, even if Ancestral Empowerment isn't a great pairing with this shield, the preceding Earthbreaker node is. That's because it grants 25% global Aftershock chance for your slam skills, and this is a strong stat because global Aftershock chance is actually quite hard to come by. Aftershocks are essentially repeats of skills with the same damage and area by default, without the need to replay the attack animation, and many of the stats for Aftershocks are tied specifically to slams that are performed with maces. You can get 35% Aftershock chance from the Aftershock 2 support gem, and another 5% from the Behemoth notable on the passive skill tree, and we know that there's also a new rune in this patch, the Archaic Rune of the Titan, which grants 10% global Aftershock chance for your slams, and this would mean you'd need to use a two-handed mace in your main hand with Giant's Blood, which we'll discuss in a moment, but this in total will bring you to 75% chance for every use of Embrace the Fall to cause an Aftershock. That alone is enough to consider Titan, but this ascendancy also has Hulking Form, which makes it one of the best classes to be able to significantly boost the area of effect of Embrace the Fall by using increased effect of small passives to enhance all of the increased area of effect nodes around the warrior section of the tree. I did this in 0.4 to make the bear slams cover a massive area, and you'll be able to do that here as well. Alright, let's go over some weapon options. These are going to be used as stat sticks for your offhand. Let's begin with two-handed maces. For this, you'll need to be using Giant's Blood. Firstly, there's Rimnor's Hymn, a unique mace, and this is potentially quite a strong option for a non-Titan setup, because it sets your chance for an additional Aftershock for any slam attacks that you use to 100%. So you won't need any extra investment into Aftershock chance, and that alone is already very powerful because it's essentially double damage on each use of Embrace the Fall. However, that's all this mace has going for it, and I think a well-crafted, rare two-handed mace is likely going to provide more power, even with the nerf to gem level modifiers that's coming in this patch. So on a rare two-handed mace, you can get up to 139% increased elemental damage with attacks as a prefix. We're assuming right now that half of the Embrace the Fall damage will be converted to cold, like the shield throwing part of the skill, but I could actually see there being even more conversion on this part of the skill, but either way, you'll be able to convert more of the damage if you wanted to, and even beyond that, things like damage as extra elemental modifiers from your weapons or skills like Infernal Cry are going to make this a very good damage modifier to have on your two-handed mace. There's also accuracy rating that you can get on a prefix too, and then on the suffix, of course, there's the levels to all melee skills modifier. Right now this caps out at 7 levels, but in the upcoming patch this is probably going to be nerfed to +5 or +6, and even at the nerfed value it's going to be a must-have modifier for the huge damage increase that it provides. Then with Abyss Crafting you can reveal a prefix for increased damage with empowered skills, and Perfect Essences will allow you to gain a chunk of damage as extra elemental. Cold is the obvious one if you're scaling cold penetration and the likes, but lightning may also be a good shout for access to shock. Beyond two-handed maces though, there are some other options. If you had enough intelligence, you could consider going for a triple damage gained as extra wand, though I think even at nerfed values, the skill level scaling is going to be hard to beat on a two-handed mace. There's also the unique mace Nebuloch, so you can guarantee crits if you have good endurance charge generation. I think this is quite a good option to avoid scaling crit chance, but I will note that the shield throw portion of the skill does have a very good 10% base crit, so if Embrace the Fall has the same, then this might not be as good as it first seems. There's also some unique Sceptre options that you could use in your main hand, which can be quite good options if you have good use for that extra spirit. Sacred Flame provides a massive amount of damage gained as extra fire, up to 60%, and it makes enemies resist elemental damage based on their lowest resistance, so if you're going for methods of lowering enemy cold resistance, you can still benefit greatly from that extra fire damage. It also grants Purity of Fire, which is some bonus fire resistance, but there's also the free reservation tech, which I believe currently still exists in the game, and it could be the case that that gets removed in the 0.5 patch notes, but we don't have them yet, so we'll have to wait and see for that one. Guiding Palm of the Eye is also another option here too. But what about the skill cooldown? Because that's kind of a big issue with this skill. It has a 4-second cooldown on the shield throw portion, and that's too high of a cooldown for something that you can just ignore. So you're going to want some kind of setup to either bypass the cooldown or lower it significantly. We don't know what's going to happen just yet to trigger skills in 0.5, but Cast on Crit linked to Frost Wall is an option here, if it can still work, especially with a Sceptres setup so you can afford the extra spirit reservation. You'll be able to potentially spawn ice crystals by critting with the shield throw portion of the skill, and then destroy those ice crystals with Embrace the Fall to reset the cooldown. This sounds good in theory, but I think in practice it may be a bit annoying. It can be the case that you don't get the proc for whatever reason on the shield throw, maybe not enough energy generated or missing the projectile hit, and you miss the cooldown reset. There's also an amulet that was showcased in the reveal, which has similar application with its built-in skill Midnight Zenith, where you'll be able to spawn ice crystals based on critical hits. However, you could also go the way of scaling cooldown recovery rate. As Ares Impatience is quite a powerful support gem, it provides 100% increased CDR, which would bring the 4-second cooldown down to 2 seconds, but it does take up a support link. And it also causes you to lose 25% of your life, mana, and energy shield on use, which is quite painful. And of course, I do have to mention Temporalis here, even though this is a ridiculously expensive item. And also, from a very brief mention that we had in the Q&A, we know that Chronomancer is getting some changes in the upcoming patch, so that will be something to look out for in the patch notes, because Chronomancer already has a way to proc cooldown bypass, and some increased CDR baked into the Ascendancy, and it's possible that a rework will make this class more favourable for use with Nightfall. Overall though, when it comes to this skill's cooldown, I think it may be the case that you'll want to have a method of spawning ice crystals in addition to some cooldown recovery rate to kind of balance it out a bit and make gameplay a bit smoother in the event you're unable to actually destroy an ice crystal with Embrace the Fall. But that's going to be it for this video. I'm still waiting for the patch notes before I commit to a league starter, but right now I do like the look of Nightfall, and it has a pretty good starter option currently in the form of a Shield Wall Titan that can then transition into using the shield later on. What are your thoughts on the Nightfall shield though? Let me know by commenting below. Thanks for watching this video, and as always, stay tuned and stay safe.